All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another breakdown, preview, and prediction video. Today, we're doing Oleksandr Usyk versus Rico Verhoeven. A very, very different fight to prepare for. Obviously, we have Rico Verhoeven, somebody that when you're watching his film study, when I'm going through it to work out what's he going to do well in the boxing ring, what's his strongest skills, boxing related, but then he's going in there throwing combinations. You know, he throws a nice 1-2, but then he parries it up with a calf kick or a high kick or a knee, and it's an illegal clinch that you can't do in boxing. It's like, all right, so when he gets into this boxing ring, how's he going to be able to get that out of his system? How's he going to be able to land these combinations knowing that he can't supplement it all with a high kick? He can't supplement it all with a calf kick. He can't, mix it up as much as you would in a kickboxing ring. That limits your output. That limits what you're going to do in a boxing ring, because Oleksandr Usyk, he knows what he's got to do. He knows his skill set. He's adapted many combinations, many different, punches that he can land on different opponents, where Rico Verhoeven, he's there saying, well, I've spent the past 20 years, when I lead my combination, I'm going to lead it with that calf kick. When I lead my combination, I'm going to lead it with a high kick, and then I'm going to throw the 1-2, then I'm going to throw the uppercut. I'm going to start with a clinch, break it apart, and then land the hook, So when looking at the fight, it is a very different one to prepare for, but I've sort of narrowed it down. I do know what Rico Verhoeven can do well boxing related, and I do believe I know what he's going to do in this fight. Let's start with the tail of the tape, because Rico Verhoeven, another person that I'd probably mostly compare him to Anthony Joshua. I think physically, the way that they fight, him and Anthony Joshua, they're probably the most similar characters that Oleksandr Usyk has fought, and that's why I've spent a lot of time going through those two fights between Oleksandr Usyk and Anthony Joshua. And you know what? You could make an argument that out of all the opponents that Oleksandr Usyk has faced, Anthony Joshua probably gave him the two most competitive fights, and you'd probably say that the AJ second fight and the first Fury fight are the two closest anybody has ever come to beating Oleksandr Usyk. So it's a good person to, focus on. I thought Anthony Joshua in that second fight, he did a lot of stuff that I think Rico Verhoeven can put into his game. But let's start with the tail of the tape. Oleksandr Usyk, age 39, Rico Verhoeven, age 37. The height, 2 inches in favor of Rico Verhoeven, 6'5" to 6'3", so 196 centimeters to 191 centimeters, and a very strong reach advantage for Rico Verhoeven, 210 centimeter reach to 198 centimeters, 82.7 inches to 78 inches in favor of Rico Verhoeven. Now the weight. Rico Verhoeven's last fight was at 265 pounds, but he averages anywhere between, the early 250s to the early 270s. And he's an orthodox fighter, that compared to Oleksandr Usyk, the southpaw fighter, and his weight, averages around that 221 to 223. But his last few fights have been his heaviest fights, with that last fight against Daniel Dubois being at 227.5 pounds. Now, Oleksandr Usyk, in his last two fights, Tyson Fury went up a whole heap of weight in his second fight. Daniel Dubois is a big puncher, and I think Oleksandr Usyk wanted that extra padding, knowing that Daniel Dubois in that first fight did hurt him a few times to the body. And I expect Oleksandr Usyk really not to get much heavier than that. I'd be very surprised if he came in close to 230. I think we're going to see him back between that 223 and 228. I'd be shocked if he was higher than that. I don't see how it will help. I know Rico Verhoeven is a big puncher, but I think the movement and the stamina and running over the course of 12 rounds is very important. That's probably a good starting point when talking about this preview, because when we look at Rico Verhoeven, he's, a career kickboxing fighter. Him at Glory, every time he had a title fight, which basically was every fight he's had over the past decade, he was fighting 5 3-minute rounds. Now, that's very different to these 12 3-minute rounds that he's going to fight. And most of the time you say, well, he's a high-level athlete. He's a professional fighter. He'll be able to adapt to it. Well, even the highest-level boxers right now can't keep up with the output and the stamina and the gas tank that Oleksandr Usyk have. Everybody seems to gas out. Even the best ones, like even AJ, looked to slow down in those last few rounds. Tyson Fury, he gets hurt late in those fights with Oleksandr Usyk. Tony Bellew was able to go with him all the way till the end and then get stopped late in that fight. So even the top-level boxers that are, career driven to 10 3-minutes or 12 3-minute rounds, they've been in world title fights, even they gas out. So I don't know how Rico Verhoeven, somebody that has only fought 5 3-minute rounds, somebody that doesn't actually look like he has got the greatest gas tank over that. I know he does win a lot of decisions, and he does, he does win the later rounds, but he's not somebody that's got this output machine that he doesn't slow down. He still does slow down, but he doesn't slow down as much as his opponent, so he can still win those rounds. But you watch his fight footage and you say, this guy, he's a different fighter in the later rounds than he is in the early rounds. The power isn't there as much. The speed isn't there as much. Whereas Oleksandr Usyk, you watch him and you say, round 1 doesn't look too dissimilar to what round 11 and round 12 do. So I do have a lot of reservations about how Rico Verhoeven, at his age now, with his experience fighting only 5 3-minute rounds, translates and actually comes into a boxing ring and says, all right, I'm going to be able to compete with Oleksandr Usyk. I'm going to be able to match that gas tank over 12 rounds. Unless the game plan is, let's not let it go 12 rounds. If it only goes 5 rounds, that's all I need. So for Rico Verhoeven, I think a lot of it's got to come down to how much damage I can deal in those first few rounds. Slow him down as much as I can in those first few rounds, because I don't see Rico Verhoeven being able to match that gas tank of Oleksandr Usyk. All right, let's stay on that talking point of Rico Verhoeven's approach to this fight. Now, Rico Verhoeven, for me, is going to approach this fight in a sort of similar way to Daniel Dubois. I think Rico Verhoeven's going to come into this fight and try and stop Oleksandr Usyk as quickly as possible. There's even a quote going around that he said during the past few weeks, I'll knock his head off. I'm 55 pounds heavier, so as soon as I hit him, it's going to be something different. Now, for me, that is a poor approach to this fight, and it's the same one that Daniel Dubois had, because you are 55 pounds heavier. The punches are going to hurt. But first of all, you are going to be a lot slower than Oleksandr Usyk. You have to measure those punches. And as soon as that 55 pounds of extra mass misses Oleksandr Usyk, he's going to be straight on top of you. He's going to be throwing that right jab followed by that big left hook. And it stopped Daniel Dubois. It did a lot of damage to Tyson Fury. And for me, I think Rico Verhoeven, coming in the same way that Daniel Dubois did, you even look at that final punch that Oleksandr Usyk lands on Daniel Dubois. That's off the back of a massive right hook that Daniel Dubois misses. And if Rico Verhoeven's game plan is to end this fight with one punch, it's going to be that simple. He's going to miss that punch because of Oleksandr Usyk's movement. He's going to get countered, and he's probably going to be stopped. So I think Rico Verhoeven, you've got to make sure that when you land that shot, or when you throw that shot, you land that shot, because Anthony Joshua, he changed something up in his first fight to his second fight. In the first fight, I thought, early on in the fight, he was throwing big punches, but they were missing by a mile. By the end of the fight, his big punches were brought down to about 45%, and he was just making sure that they were landing on Oleksandr Usyk, and he had a lot more luck, and he translated that into the second fight. He was saying, all right, I'm going to make sure that the big punches land. They don't have to be 90 to 100% punches. 45, 50%, keep touching him, keep finding that target. And then when the opportunity arises, that's when I'm going to land the big punch. But at least feel out your opponent. I think Rico Verhoeven can go very astray here if he just goes out there to try and blast Oleksandr Usyk away, the same way Daniel Dubois did. Because Daniel Dubois, he beats Anthony Joshua, so you think, all right, he's turned it around. He's going to be able to land these big shots. But Oleksandr Usyk is just way too quick, way too crafty. The footwork, the bouncing back and forth, you can't just throw one big shot and think it's going to land. All right, let's get into what Rico Verhoeven does well. He's got a strong jab, but stronger than his jab is that right straight and that right cross that he throws straight through the middle. It's the punch that stopped Benny Adegbuyi. He's also got some great uppercuts and hooks. He used those to stop Levi Rigters. And when you watch his punches, he's going to have to just change a few things up, because you'll see in some of those uppercut footage that he does a lot of grabbing at the back of the head, which I believe that in kickboxing, as long as he doesn't clinch his hands together and pull the head down, it's fine. You are allowed a little bit of leeway there. In boxing, you're not allowed to do that. But you see some of these similar uppercuts that he throws where he's grabbing at the back of the head. Well, I've seen that in boxing as well. I've seen Anthony Joshua land a few of those. I've seen Tyson Fury land a few of those. So they are illegal to a point, but you can land one or two. Plenty of fighters make it dirty, and I think Rico Verhoeven, land one or two of those. Throw them out there. Just see what happens. You'll get a warning, but you could do the damage in that warning. So, you don't have to completely switch it up. Be a little bit more cautious. Don't make it as obvious. But he's got some great uppercuts. And like I said, I've seen Tyson Fury land the same punch. I've seen Anthony Joshua land the same punch. Now, a few things that I have noticed in his game as well. Defensively, very disciplined, has a nice high guard, but susceptible to straight punches and uppercuts. So he's going to have to watch out for that. The other problem that Rico Verhoeven has, which is a massive problem in his game, is lazy jabs. He does throw out that left jab a few times lazily. And although it's not too bad, the jab, he's not actually getting countered off that jab. It's what he does with his other hand. He actually drops his right hand a lot in attacks and in jabbing. Dropping that right hand and throwing out a lazy jab is just a clear invitation to get countered. Now, you're not going to see many times he gets countered or hurt, but one opportunity that he does do that exact same thing was in his fight against Levi Rigters. He throws out the lazy jab. Levi Rigters, I know it's MMA, but he sends out a spinning back fist. Lands flush on the right-hand side of Rico Verhoeven's chin. Now, yes, Oleksandr Usyk is not allowed to do that. He won't be doing that. But it comes from the exact same place that a left hook will. And you saw the damage that it did to Rico Verhoeven. So, although what Levi Rigters, Usyk's not going to be allowed to do, in principle, dropping that right hand, throwing out a lazy jab is just a clear invitation for Oleksandr Usyk to jump on that with a straight right followed by a left hook or just the left hook in general. So that's something that Rico Verhoeven needs to narrow down and stay disciplined with, is keeping that high guard. Yes, you're going to get hit straight, you're going to get uppercuts, but keeping that high guard, making sure that every punch you throw, whether it is a jab, whether it is a straight right, everything comes back, because the moment you leave one of those out there, like we saw Tyson Fury do a few times in his first and second fight, when you're leaving the punches out there, when you're leaving your guard low, you are going to get countered. You need to bring those punches back snappy. Everything has to be thrown with precision. Everything has to be crisp. Everything has to come back to where it was sent from. And that's something that, like I said, Tyson Fury made the mistake of. When he got more comfortable, when he was getting success, he lowered the guard. He started throwing punches out lazily, didn't bring them back. And when that sharpness is gone, when everything's not been thrown with intent, Oleksandr Usyk sees that and he capitalizes and he counters on top of that. So Rico Verhoeven, a strong jab, strong right hands. He's got enough to be able to beat Oleksandr Usyk. Now, if we compare what Rico Verhoeven's good at and what Anthony Joshua was able to do, especially in that second fight, what I noticed Anthony Joshua was able to do in that second fight was, number one, keep Usyk back using the jab. Just constantly throwing out that jab, making sure it's crisp, making sure it's landing. But with his extra reach, keeping Oleksandr Usyk off you is the number one priority. Keep him at bay, because number one, you're not doing any damage, but neither is Oleksandr Usyk. And when the judges are watching, Oleksandr Usyk's having no luck, but your jab's landing, that's scoring shots constantly. And then you follow everything up with that straight right, and it has to make sure it lands. Like I said, you can't afford it to miss, like Anthony Joshua was doing early in the first fight. What he changed up in his second fight was sending that straight right constantly to the body, just over and over and over again. Number one, the body doesn't move as much as the head, and number two, it slows down Oleksandr Usyk. And if we want to keep talking about body shots, Daniel Dubois lands an illegal punch to the body, but also a legal punch to the body, both of which hurts Oleksandr Usyk. We also saw Anthony Joshua go to the body, land a crisp punch that hurts Oleksandr Usyk. Yes, it was deemed low, but neither the Daniel Dubois one or the Anthony Joshua one, if you look at the footage, are typically that low. They're not as though they're really hitting him in the groin. The Daniel Dubois one a little bit higher than the AJ one, but I think the opportunity is there to not only do the sticks to the body constantly with that right hand to keep him at bay, slow him down a little bit, run that gas tank, but I still think that there is a problem there with the body of Oleksandr Usyk, and I think that's one of the reasons he got heavier in his later fights. So for Rico Verhoeven, send those big power punches to the body. And then what Anthony Joshua did was, after a few turns to the body, he mixed it up. He then went, all right, you think I'm going to the body this time? Bang to the head. Has success there, but doesn't stay on that success. He then goes back to the body. He says, you're not going to know when that headshot's coming. And I think that's the big thing that Rico Verhoeven needs to look at and do, is keep going to the body and mix in the headshots. Now, I spoke about how good Rico Verhoeven is at uppercuts, and there's going to be plenty of opportunities. If you look at that second fight with Fury, Fury was able to land countless uppercuts when, Usyk was at range, and when Usyk was coming in the clinch. There's plenty of opportunities with the guard of Oleksandr Usyk to land straight rights and that uppercut through the guard. So I expect Rico Verhoeven, like I said, to throw the legal ones out there, but you know what? Mix in those legal ones as well. one or two in the fight, you're not going to get in trouble for, but they could be the ones that do the damage. You know, lots of people don't like some of these dark arts that you do in boxing. I think some of them, there is a line between what you can and can't do. And Rico Verhoeven, I think, crosses that line a few times. I watched some of his footage. The amount of shots that you see him put in the back of the head and stuff, yeah, you can't be doing that. But just a little pull at the back of the head and an uppercut straight through. I said so many times in boxing. I mean, we saw Daniel Dubois versus Fabio Wardley last week. Daniel Dubois is like a king of dark arts, headbutts, elbows, all sorts. Lots of people don't like him. Some of them, I think there is a line. And I think Rico Verhoeven in this fight, the messier you can make this fight, the dirtier you can make this fight, get on the inside, make it just a terrible, awful fight where Oleksandr Usyk can't get in rhythm. He can't be, that pitter-patter of moving inside the pocket, moving around you, throwing that jab out, because Oleksandr Usyk will run that show. And I don't think in any way, shape, or form Rico Verhoeven in a, just a fair one-on-one boxing match, there's no chance for me Rico Verhoeven wins that fight. Rico Verhoeven needs to use his power, use a bit of dark arts, make it dirty, land the big shots, and just try and slow down Oleksandr Usyk. Now, with Oleksandr Usyk, what does he need to do well in this fight? Well, pretty much what he does well in every fight. There's not too many holes in Oleksandr Usyk's game. We go through 4 or 5 fights and there is a few holes. Yeah, he can get a straight right, he can get an uppercut landed, but Oleksandr Usyk is such a complete package, and when he's coming up against Rico Verhoeven this weekend, it's going to depend on what Rico Verhoeven brings to what we see from Oleksandr Usyk, because we've seen Oleksandr Usyk fight Derek Chisora, where he's on the back foot and he's just countering and moving away from Derek Chisora. He then transitions into the Daniel Dubois fight, where he invites the big shots from Daniel Dubois. He counters off the top of those. He uses his nice jab. He's clean boxing, but most of his work is off the counter. And then he moves into the Anthony Joshua first fight, where he's on the front foot and he's trying to use that jab and he's asserting himself the dominant fighter against Anthony Joshua. Then we go into the second fight where Anthony Joshua switches it up. He goes to the body. So what does Oleksandr Usyk do? He once again changes himself, finds a different way, and beats him. Moving to the Fury fights. Fury has success in that first fight. Coming into the second fight, Fury basically has none of that success he has in the first fight. And that is what I think Oleksandr Usyk does the best in his career. It's just being able to adapt. It's being crafty. It's being able to solve every single puzzle that he's been, put ahead of. And there's great things that he does. He's got one of the best jabs in the game. His footwork is elite. His movement, his angles, the ability to control distance, and most importantly, that big left hook that he's able to land on absolutely everybody. Even that power jab that he's able to jump in and out with. He's just the all-around package. So trying to find a hole in what Oleksandr Usyk's going to do and saying what Rico Verhoeven is able to do is a very tough challenge. And I think Rico Verhoeven, if he's able to stay measured, if he's able to land his shots, make it a bit messy in points, but also use your strong jab, bring everything back, go to the body. Just keep going to the body. I think that opens up a lot of opportunities for Rico Verhoeven. The straight shots, the uppercuts are his gateway to being able to land shots on Oleksandr Usyk, but it has to start with jabbing Oleksandr Usyk. It needs to stop Oleksandr Usyk from getting into rhythm, stop Oleksandr Usyk from throwing his jab constantly. Anthony Joshua in that second fight was able to do that. And that's why I keep going back to him, because I think similar molds between Anthony Joshua and Rico Verhoeven. And I think Rico Verhoeven can look at that game plan and say, all right, how can I use this jab that AJ was able to use in the second fight? How can I use these body shots that AJ was able to use in this second fight? And how can I also probably couple that up with the uppercuts of Tyson Fury and some of the body work from Daniel Dubois? I think taking a little bit from every single fight and trying to just put it all together in this fight is a very tough ask, especially for somebody that is a kickboxer and not an elite boxer. It's going to be difficult, but there are opportunities there to land on Oleksandr Usyk. For Oleksandr Usyk, when you look at some of Rico Verhoeven's, poorness, right? We saw his fights against Ben Sadik. Ben Sadik threw out about, 12 jabs in a row and then just a straight right that landed right on the button. The fight against Vaktakov just lands a right cross and lands right on the chin through, almost on the outside of the guard of Rico Verhoeven. It wasn't set up with anything. There was maybe a few jabs, but it was basically that right cross and poor defensive work from Rico Verhoeven. There's going to be plenty of opportunities. If Rico Verhoeven's coming in here to throw his hands, he's going to get countered very easily. I think Oleksandr Usyk, as long as he can establish his jab, move around the ring, I think Rico Verhoeven has a chance within the first 4 or 5 rounds. which Rico Verhoeven, he's going to have to prove that he can have that stamina. I just don't see in any way, shape, or form this fight being able to go 12 rounds. I think Rico Verhoeven either lands his shot from the heavens early, or Oleksandr Usyk outworks the living shit out of him and eventually stops him. And if I'm saying Oleksandr Usyk, which I am, my prediction is Oleksandr Usyk to win this fight in the 8th round. I think he stops Rico Verhoeven. I think he makes light work of this. There's just Rico Verhoeven has to change up way too much and adapt way too much to this fight. He has to get rid of all the kicks. He's one of the best calf kickers in all of kickboxing, all right? One of his best weapons are his leg kicks and even his high kicks. That's a massive weapon to just have to keep sheltered. He's not a phenomenal boxer from what I've seen, all right? He's got some good skills. He's got a nice jab. He's got a straight right. He can land some big hooks when you're hurt, but in terms of technical boxing, I don't see Rico Verhoeven being able to match it with Oleksandr Usyk. It will take one big shot, either to the body or to the head in the first 4 rounds to swing this tide, and I don't see Rico Verhoeven having the boxing acumen to land that punch. All right? And for that reason, like I said, I think Oleksandr Usyk waits it out, solves the puzzle, makes him lose a little bit of energy. 7th, 8th round, stops Rico Verhoeven. I think he wins it with a counter shot. I think he invites the pressure from Rico Verhoeven. I think Rico Verhoeven gets a little bit overexcited, throws out a lazy punch, gets hit with that left hook, and it is the night over. Guys, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'm out of here, guys. See ya!